Assembly has urged Supreme Court to dismiss the suit filed by 11 People's Democratic Party governors challenging the declaration of a state of emergency in Rivers State. The federal legislature, in its response, contended that the plaintiff's suit was procedurally flawed and lacked merit, adding that the National Assembly said this in a preliminary objection dated April 22, 2025, and argued that the court lacks jurisdiction to entertain the suit and should award 1 billion naira in cost against the plaintiffs for filing what it termed a frivolous and speculative suit. This is coming after President Bola Tinubu had declared a state of emergency in Rivers State on March 18, 2025, suspending Governor Fubara, Deputy Governor Ngozi Odo, and all elected members of the State House of Assembly for an initial period of 6 months. Following the suspension, Tinubu appointed Rear Admiral Ibok Ete Ebas, retired, as the sole administrator to oversee the state's affairs during the suspension period, while the National Assembly ratified the president's declaration through a voice vote. Meanwhile, the PDP governors had approached the Supreme Court to challenge the president's powers to suspend the democratically elected state institution and replace it with an unelected one, and the plaintiffs in the suit are the governors of Adamawa State, Enugu, Osun, Oyo, Bauchi, Akwa Ibom, Plateau, Delta, Taraba, Zamfara, and Bayelsa states. The Attorney General of the Federation and the National Assembly are listed as the first and second defendants, respectively, while all 11 states in the suit asked the Apex Court to determine 6 constitutional questions, including whether the President of Nigeria can lawfully suspend or interfere with the offices of a governor and deputy governor and replace them with an unelected appointee under the guise of a state of emergency proclamation. Ndamzi, what do you make of this story? But first of all, I must ask you this question, and I want you to look into it as you're giving your angle to the story. The question I want to ask is, does PDP Governors Forum have the constitutional right to institute this matter, considering that PDP Governors Forum is not a political party? Secondly, PDP Governors Forum is not registered. It is merely a forum, as it's called, of the party, but it is not registered. So if it is not registered, it doesn't have the legitimacy in the real sense of the word to even push for something. Just like calling yourself an association, but you have no backing, you have no CSC, you're not registered in any way. So I want to understand if they even have, because I'm not looking at the jurisdiction of the court right now. What I'm looking at, if they have the legitimacy to file this suit.
Okay, thank you very much. The courts is open to everybody.
Okay.
When you feel your rights have been abridged, you can approach the court for enforcement. When you feel that your legal rights have been tampered, everybody, so long as you are a Nigerian, you have the capacity to sue or be sued. Now, you asked a question that is very interesting, whether the Governors Forum, can litigate on this regard. The thing is, they do not have the capacity to sue. Okay. One, they are not registered. They are not known to any laws of the land. Okay. That is on one part. Then now, I want Nigerians to be abreast of this information. In commencement of trial or action in court, there are things a lawyer looks at before instituting an action in court. The first thing is, this court I'm approaching, does this court have jurisdiction on this matter? You look at it, okay, where did it happen? Okay, this court have jurisdiction. You are good to go on that. The second thing a lawyer looks at is locus standi, which is the question you asked. whether they have the capacity to sue. That is the locus standi. The proper party to institute the action. When you look at it, you ascertain whether or not the person you want to fight for have the locus to sue. And when you identify all these components, then you will now see the fourth one you will now look at is a reasonable course of action. Because without reasonable course of action, what are you litigating about? When you sort out that reasonably there is a course of action, that a course of action have arose, you can now move ahead to institute an action. So, giving more voice to what is happening in Supreme Court, the National Assembly raising a preliminary objection to that suit. Yes, of course. Don't forget, the job of lawyers when facing litigation is to make sure that you impress your client and win the case. And so the rules of court allows for preliminary objection. Preliminary objection simply means an objection a lawyer can bring at the commencement of trial. So if the objection fails, then it means the trial will continue. But if the court, in their wisdom, look at the preliminary objection and say, okay, the question before the court or the objection before the court is in line with the rules of court, and this objection are truly real, then the court strikes out the matter. But I in this regard, let us begin with jurisdiction of the court. Section 232, sub 1 of the 1999 Constitution as amended gives the Supreme Court the original jurisdiction to hear matters between the states and the federal government, or the state against another state, or the state against the National Assembly, or the National Assembly against the president. Okay, the Supreme Court have the original jurisdiction to be the first of court instance and also the last court of instance in this regard. But in my view, an opinion as a lawyer, I think the PDP governors have missed it. Fine, in the event where states and federal have disagreement, the Supreme Court have the jurisdiction to entertain the matter. But in this regard, I must say it categorically that the matter will fail on local standard. The matter will fail on local standard because the parties who instituted that action
are not known to law.
Are not just the fact that they are not known to law. They are known to law, they are governors. But the forum in which they came in through is not known to law. And also, the question before the court, I believe that the Attorney General will put before the court is, can a good neighbor litigate on behalf of the neighbor? The question under the law is no. Now, if we are coming back home, okay, who is the injured party here? The suspended governor of Rivers State, Sir Siminalayi Fubara. At that instance, he is the proper party to institute this action in court.
As an individual, not on behalf of the state?
No,
He
can institute on behalf of the states. Because he is the governor of the state and his office is affected. At that point, the dispute is between the office of the governor and the presidency.
Okay.
So the question at that point is, who has the jurisdiction? At that point, the Federal High Court will be the proper court to approach. But considering the emergency situation, the time will stretch more than the 6 months. So these are lacunas that need to be cured in our laws. Nigerians need to be educated because, see, Lansha, I can tell you for free that when Supreme Court tomorrow or whenever throws that matter away, you will see Nigerians going to social media, abusing them, calling them names, saying they have taken bribe, saying they are doing the bidding of the president. But they need, we Nigerians, me inclusive, we need proper education. Proper education when it comes to issues that has to do with the courts and the judiciary. I reiterated earlier that before you bring an action to court, there are steps to take. And I mentioned the steps: locus standi, jurisdiction, and a reasonable course of action. In this case, a reasonable course of action have arose. In this case, there are questions. The two remaining questions borders on jurisdiction of the court and also the locus standi of the parties who instituted the case. The proper thing to have been done is simple. Similarly, Fubara instituting that action, then the 11 governors file a joinder to join him in Federal High Court. That is the proper thing to do. Anything outside that will not fly in Supreme Court. I can tell you for free. I have perused page by page sections of the 1999 Constitution.
Now,
sorry. There is one other preliminary objection the National Assembly raised. They talked about the Legislative Houses Act and all that. That is inconsequential. Their lawyer should have looked at locus standi. Locus standi alone would make that matter fail.
Because when I was going through it, everything they were talking about was the jurisdiction. And I am not a lawyer, but I was like, I mean, the first thing I looked at first, when I saw that case, the first thing that came to my mind is, do these people even have the legitimacy to file this matter? That was the I'm saying for myself, who is not a lawyer, but then I understand the intricacies of law and how it plays. I asked myself, do these people even have the legitimacy to institute this matter? Because when I was seeing the defense, the counter affidavit of the National Assembly, they were just talking about jurisdiction. I'm like, there is something much more than the jurisdiction that you should be looking at. Now, considering again that the Delta State governor, because I want to ask you this question, the governor has defected from PDP to APC. So now it means that he has compromised the setup of the appellants in that matter.
No, it is simple.
He will have to withdraw from the matter.
It is simple. It is simple. At that point, their lawyer will file for amendment. Okay, their lawyer will seek leave of court to file for amendment. They will amend their brief of argument, expunging the name of Delta State PDP. Okay. At that point, so that ordinarily,
but that should have been done. Or they are waiting
with what I know lawyers do, I believe they are on the process. Okay. Now, and what the Delta governor did will not affect the matter in court.
All right.
But I want to bring this also to the notice of Nigerians. Instituting that action, challenging the declaration of the state of emergency, and also asking the court to determine whether the president have the powers under the law, the constitution, to suspend the elected governor and the House of Assembly. Believe me, that would have been a very good test case for our jurisprudence. That action, if I were similar a Fubara, I would have gone to court.
He knows that if he goes to court, this matter will stretch until 2027.
Yes, of course. But
so you mean that he will have to sacrifice his governorship,
do you know,
in order to test the courts? I don't know if you understand.
Yes, I understand.
He finds himself.
I understand. You see, Nigerians politicians are greedy. They don't care what happens to the people. All they want is manipulate the process and get what they want. Ordinarily, truth be told, I don't want to start looking at his previous words when he was showing off, telling the world that nothing will happen and all that. We know the story, okay? This would have been a time for him to prove that nothing will happen by way of challenging the declaration in court. That would also have opened a new jurisprudence in our law. So that, because if you don't challenge this action today in court, tomorrow the president may wake up and remove the governor of Cross River and appoint a sole administrator because it has not been cured. The defect has not been cured. So we need to put our records straight. We need the laws of the land to be straight. And this is also a challenging time for the National Assembly. Looking at what is happening everywhere in Nigeria is a time for the National Assembly to amend our constitution.
All right.
There are constitutional crises in Nigeria, so many. National Assembly should own up that the fact that they have made a mistake in the past and start correcting them.
Okay.
Till date, we have not heard anything about electoral reforms and all that. We need all this. 2027 is around the corner. The government will still do the election and have their ways. So, National Assembly, what are they doing? It is not just about politicizing everything. Nigerians sent them there to represent them and make good laws that will affect the lives of Nigerians positively.
You're right, very well.
There are two sets of people, the oppressors and the oppressed. And in between are the cowards and the hypocrites. Which are you?
No matter how tough the challenge, how high the obstacles, we always overcome.
What Nigerians need now is not about the dumb thing. You can